Thanks for taking the time to listen to us today. My name is Aaron Dysart. I'm a city artist in residence in St. Paul, and that is through Public Art St. Paul. Part of my purview is to oversee the public art projects that are attached to the public art ordinance in terms of road reconstruction. So what we're here today is I'm going to introduce John, who, at least on my screen, is directly below me on my Zoom tiles here. John was an artist that was picked through a selection process about over a year ago. It's been a long, kind of drawn out process, and we're super excited to be at this spot. What his project area is, it's from the road reconstruction of Wheelock Parkway that took place in 2017. And his project area is from basically Lake Como all the way to Danforth. And his charge is to make an artwork along the Grand Round that's adjacent to that project area. Any artwork that is along the Grand Round falls within the master plan of the Grand Round itself, which Wheelock Parkway is a part of. With the theme of birds, animals, and migration, thinking about the different ways we can traverse the different neighborhoods of our city, since the Grand Round itself is open to cars, pedestrians, and bikes, and is a way to kind of go through these different areas and neighborhoods of which we may not kind of traverse normally as well. So that's kind of the charge of the artist. John was one of a group of about 5 artists that will be installing artwork along Wheelock Parkway all the way to Edgerton this summer. So we're kind of excited to have this almost crown on the top of St. Paul that you can drive, walk, and bike to, a bunch of kind of big new public art pieces. So I will turn it, that's just a background on the project, and I can kind of answer city questions or the project questions itself. John's here to kind of get some feedback on what he's been up to. So I'll turn it over to John.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I'm John Camrath. I am a sculptor. I actually grew up in St. Paul, White Bear and Larpenteur, but now I'm coming to you from my studio, which is right at the sometimes my address comes up as Matamidi and sometimes as St. Paul, but anyways, so I'm thankful to have been chosen for the space that's as Aaron said, between Como and Danforth, but the area that my sculpture, after checking out the space, everything, the area that I think we're really focused on is actually right by the lake, right by Como. Not actually on the exact sidewalk of the lake, but across the street from it. But so yeah, I took the charge of birds, animals, migration. I really tried to lean heavy on that migration, birds, trying to get some sense of movement, and then also really trying to think about, as we think about migration, but also some of community and what is it that we're moving and what are we based around. And so from there, I kind of went with a nest theme. My 2 main things were part of a nest and wings, or part of a bird, a real simplified bird into wings. And so so with that, I can try and I can show you here. So this is what I've come up with. So you can see, trying to think about, like I said before, like our community of a nest, and how we could see community, how would that be represented? So trying to make it so that it's more visible, we kind of turn that nest up vertical so it can be seen. And then as well, on my turntable here, it's spinning, but that's kind of to represent if you were a, around 6 foot tall person here, walking around it, what it would look like if you were kind of just doing some laps around. So so we have, again, then the simplified wing forms up top, and then as it turns, trying to really create this strong sense of movement, right? And so it kind of really makes you want to walk around, circle around it. when we were out on the space, there's actually it's a super awesome, super beautiful spot for it too. That it gets to go in kind of right at a corner. There's just a triangle. It's like it's designed specifically for it. Well, I guess the sculpture technically is designed for the space, so that makes sense. But the space seems like somebody thought it should have a sweet sculpture in it. So, right.
And just to kind of interject, if you all want, I do have like the Google Street View pulled up on my computer. If somebody wants to make me a co-host, we're welcome to kind of show that that spot. If not, no big deal. Again, if you're looking up Wheelock Parkway, basically, you know how they redid the intersection and made it a little less complicated, even though it is where Maryland hits right there at Como itself. We're right off to the right looking up Wheelock Parkway. But again, I'm not sure. Let's see here. All right, I think I can share now. Just might make it a little bit easier so y'all know where we're talking about. So again, as we look, lake's over here. Oof. Here is Maryland Avenue. Obviously, Wheelock Parkway is right here. That sign's currently installed. John's thinking about, and we're looking at this spot right into here. What I like about this spot is what is not shown, as y'all probably know, because you see it every day, there's the new kiosk is right there. And this is the kind of the start, obviously, of Wheelock Parkway. So to have this kind of beautiful, you know, kind of towering piece to mark the start of this kind of great parkway that it goes all the way to, you know, Lake Phalen, just seems like a perfect fit. So I guess what we're kind of curious is to get, I'll stop sharing so I don't get people dizzy looking at street views spinning around. You know, what we're looking for is feedback. Kind of, what do you think? Anything we should start thinking about? You know, John can talk about the color scheme. Basically, looking at this notion of this abstract nest that reads both. You know, as you tip it on side, it is that hole to be, you know, filled just like a house, but you know, kind of slightly references a tire as well. So I like how it bounces back and forth. And for me, the strong is that crown of wings and kind of boat shaped forms that really kind of anchor it to the location itself. But basically, we're just kind of looking for feedback. We're excited about it, so we kind of want to share and see if you all have any kind of questions, comments, or anything kind of going forward.
I realized I forgot to mention. So again, if this is a 6 foot tall, I'm 6 feet, so I just go with that as my measurement. So if that's a 6 foot tall person, this thing ends up being about maybe 10 and a half, close to 11 feet. I don't know if it shows there on if it comes across in the computer, but you'll have to believe me. It's about 11-ish feet or so tall, maybe not quite 11. So
hey, John, it's Jonathan. What's it going to be made of?
So that is an excellent question. I go back and forth. It is not yet fully decided. So if I were to stick with the current color scheme, which I just came up with this color scheme because I like these colors. So that is still something that I'll be honest, as things are getting figured out, often my sculptures, the color is one of the later things that gets decided and can change close to when it actually gets painted, to be honest. So if it is that, it'll be mild steel and either powder coated or like automotive, like, you know, commercial automotive finish. And then, so that's one option. Then the other thing that I am kind of going back and forth on, which I'm also excited about, but would be a much bigger deal. But a lot of the other pieces that I do is I'll kind of mix some either mild steel and stainless, or mild steel and then not welded together, but attached aluminum. And so if I were to do that, in one vision in my head, it looks like instead of the blue, it would probably be like a dark steel, either a dark. See if this comes through at all. A dark, almost rust patina, And then the brighter green spots would be stainless steel. And then so they could be like a like kind of a custom ground shiny. I don't know if that comes through. You can kind of see that there's like that grind pattern to it. So
Yep.
then instead of being two there we go. So then instead of it being two colors, which I guess technically it's still kind of a color, but it'd be more two values. So a darker value and a light and a bright, shiny, reflective value. So yeah, I guess that's what I've been thinking about. That's where it's currently at in its development, is trying to decide on what kind of color scheme best fits that space. Oh yeah, which I guess then that's what would determine if it would be all mild steel or if it would be a combination of mild and stainless.
And what is the timeline? When are you thinking about having the install done?
Yeah, so the goal is to build it over the winter in my studio here, pour the slab or likely it'll be a footing actually, but we'll see. We still got to get input from the structural engineer, but then to have that poured as soon as the ground is thawed, and then once that's set, you can put it up.
Oh. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't know a whole lot about different materials like this, but what is the expected lifespan depending on the materials that you use? And is there any sort of like ongoing upkeep that would be needed to keep it looking good?
Yeah, super good question. So if it were to be, well, if the base were made of stainless, which it likely will not be because that would be a bajillion dollars, then that's like it just lasts forever, ever. I don't know. I'm sure there's a time limit, but none of us would have to worry about it. But if the base is of mild steel, then depending on what the finish is, so if it's like powder coated, that's not infinite, but that would last a super long time. Even if it's like an automotive finish, then you could imagine it would last as long as, say, your car does before it rusts, as if it doesn't get driven through salt, right? So imagine if it's just in one place and it's not being constantly salted and everything. So and then the other thing is, it will be regardless of how it's built, it will be a much heavier gauge than any kind of car, which is crazy light and thin. And so then, it's not going to rust through like your car will eventually rust through. So, but mostly the upkeep, I don't know if you can see very well, but it's just got a cement slab on this. So even if it has if we do a footing, it'll actually probably even be raised a little bit higher, so that so all it would take is, the landscaper to kind of weed whip around it. If eventually paint starts to break down, I shouldn't say if, over a long period of time, eventually it will, because that's how paint works. And so then it could be retouched up by with automotive paint that could be rolled on. So but probably it's hard to give an exact estimate depending on how much how much it gets salt around it and everything. But ones I have done for other cities usually go, I don't know, I got one in Bemidji that's I think going on 7 years with with zero upkeep so far.
So I can kind of jump in from a city standpoint. The city requires that the life expectancy is 15 years or greater, because the funding source is based on bond money, and anything purchased or used with that bond has to have a reasonable life expectancy of 15 years. And the city is going to the public works in the city of St. Paul retains ownership of the work and is responsible for maintenance. So part of actually, as John kind of nails down material, color, and all that, part of what he has to present to the city to get this design approved is a conservator's kind of report, just guaranteeing that this will last, have a reasonable life expectancy of at least 15 years. I'll say, whether it's stainless, painted steel or not, I think 15 to 20 years before we even need to think about, touching up here and there. I think we'll be just fine. We'll be looking up past public works likes us to keep, obviously, the term is 2 feet away from the roadway, but this is going to be quite a ways back, just so there isn't kind of any visual problems with people making and looking to make that corner in a car for safety standards. The piece itself will be raised up, as John stated, on a footing, just so that's a little bit proud, just so the mowers of the Parks Department won't run into it at all. And that's kind of much more of a maintenance and survivability standpoint.
And will there be a label or a plaque or, that it was created by you and dated or titled, or is there a plan for that?
So that has not been figured out yet, but I will say yes, it will, because that is something I'm guessing, Aaron, that's a thing that they usually do anyways. We haven't discussed this yet, but it's a thing that I make happen on my pieces.
It usually is in conversation with the community and the artist. The city likes to see it, and that, just a simple title artist and, nod that it came, was paid through, through the public art ordinance, and the city itself owns it, which I think is amazing. Part of this amazingness of the project is these aren't private pieces. These are kind of in, neighborhoods throughout St. Paul, for everybody to kind of see. I think the special part here is just there's so many people using Wheelock and obviously walking around Lake Como. I think it's just a great spot for this. So we'll include a signage, and then we can work with John to install that.
I've had in the past, I think more often than not, signs have been a separate thing that's kind of like right next to it or something. But this one actually kind of has, a little plaque could go pretty easily right on it too. But that's not figured out yet. That's just, I don't know. We'll see. But something will happen. It'll have something.
Just the, I like it. Feedback. Appreciate the project overall, and like the look of this. This is broadening it out a little bit more, but you talked about, I'm not sure if you came up with the, sort of nature and bird theme, or are there different themes for each of the ones along Wheelock?
Believe it or not, I worked with the master plan for the Grand Round itself, which of course goes through all of St. Paul, which Wheelock is a part of. I worked with about 6 years ago on that theme. So what I enjoy is in artwork, you try to how do we know it's all together, but how do we not get bored so there's enough interpretation? And so to base it on this content and notion of animals and migration, each artist along Wheelock has that theme, and each one is about right where John's at. They're all kind of coming to the same, even though they're operating independently. They're all interpreting this theme very differently. So when you see them, they'll be drastically different pieces, but also have this kind of undercurrent theme that's not super heavy-handed, that just like the Grand Round ties and kind of rings St. Paul, that theme just loosely ties the artwork together.
And one more thing, if
Go
I
ahead.
can, and this is just as you were talking, I was thinking about this a number of years ago when they did the stone sculpture stuff. I think they did that all in one place, maybe on Harriet Island. I don't remember for sure. And then they got placed in the places they were going to be permanently. Just thinking that could be sort of interesting if the timing worked to have a bunch of these, especially if the theme starts out the same somewhere for a grand celebration or whatever, and then before they get placed in their permanent places. But I know that would be a little difficult since they're not all being built in one place.
Just to kind of speak to that real quick, that was what you're speaking to is the Minnesota Rocks stone carving symposium. It was actually up on the St. Paul College campus right by the
Oh, okay.
cathedral. And that the organization that I'm actually through organized that. It was international. And those are placed throughout, I think it was in 2000. And those are placed throughout St. Paul parks all the way throughout. This, I love the idea. I have to say that they're made all through with Twin City artists, but in such disparate things. I think we're going to have to, hopefully when they're done, we can have a party where we can kind of walk along the whole and have a kind of a little walking festival to celebrate them.
Sure. Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Thanks.
one challenge there is the if they all have their own footings, because you can't really move them safely with the but if I don't know about the other artists, but if the other artists also have, maquettes, that could be a fun thing to see the maquettes together.
True. Yeah.
Maybe
Good
I don't know.
idea.
I have just a logistical question about community engagement. So we put out a newsletter here in D10 every Friday. And I shared that you guys are going to be at this meeting, but like now that I have a recording of your presentation, I could share that in the next newsletter. So my question is about timeline on engagement. So like, when is soliciting engagement expiring for this input? And should I just share your emails, or is there a online form, or and in addition to sharing the recording, if somebody doesn't want to watch a half hour, is there like any sort of information where they could just click through this something quick or anything?
We don't. We're not quite that organized, though. I can see the need for it. I think the best way, we're hoping to get the next step. Obviously, John has, to refine the materials and so forth. This does have to be formally presented to the city before it can be built. That way they look for safety, maintenance, all of that kind of thing. We're hoping to get that done roughly by the end of January. So I think the easiest way to, if you want to share my email address, if there is any kind of comments, questions, concerns, especially I think to me, if John's thinking about this notion of, is it color, is it, these different materials, would you like, something shiny or something colored, or a different, kind of location, those questions. And I think by the end, and, right now, obviously we're hitting holiday season, but, in the first 2 weeks of January would be great, as we can kind of, absorb those into this project. Would be fabulous. But I think if just for ease of communication, just if you want to send out my email as a point of contact, that's great.
Thanks, Aaron.
Cool.
And we're hoping to kind of get a page together at this point with other bits and bobs. It hasn't happened yet, and that's hopefully it still will. As it's such an exciting project to be able to kind of share out some of this stuff.
Cool. And we're very flexible. If you get something together, you can share it with me. I can add it to the page that we have the recording embedded on, and augment. We're flexible.
That's great. Thanks.
All right, anything else? Any other questions? Well, I'm hearing crickets. That's a sign of a good presentation. All the questions were answered already. That's that's great. Oh, I'm really excited to see this get started. I didn't know what to expect tonight. I didn't think we would see a mock-up tonight, so that's really cool. You probably said this once already, but roughly when can we expect to maybe see this in the ground on Wheelock?
Well, it'll be this summer, but I mean, it'll be if everything goes perfect, which, that's a pretty big if. So then the dream scenario would be that we would get the footings all poured, once the ground is thawed, get everything all lined up so footings could be poured. And then, a few weeks or so after that, but you gotta wait for, so we can get heavy machinery once all the frost has come out. And then for the ground to re-solidify. So, but yeah,
So,
hopefully a month or so, or just sometime in the spring.
I would say to set expectations just for, and you all know this and how fast or i.e. slow things move through the city at times. We're really shooting for, I think, just to set expectations, the beginning of summer, I think is a good time to start expecting this. Once we get that timeline kind of nailed down, we're happy to kind of reach out and kind of share that out with you all. Obviously, it's going to be a pretty quick install, but it's always nice to get people excited for what's coming up rather than trying to figure out what just happened. So when we get that timeline kind of nailed down a little bit tighter, we'll reach out and kind of share that with you. But I think we're hoping for spring, but I like to make sure we set kind of reasonable expectations. I think beginning of summer is what we're looking.
Yeah, that's wise.
And Laura, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry I'm jumping in late. Just one question about the project. Will there be signage that explains what the project is and the names of who did it and dates? We have some other artwork in the neighborhood or near the District 10, and it doesn't have any of the signage that explains who did the work. Thanks.
Yeah, so we don't have the signage figured out yet, but that is a thing that is very important to me, and yeah, I think we will make sure that it does because I desperately want that.
All right,
All
I
right.
don't see any other questions, so last call.
I should say, as far as if this is a thing that people care about, for a community who wants to see stuff and see the project as I'm working on it over the, over the winter and stuff in the studio, I have an Instagram account is that helpful at all? If I'm posting pictures of it, do you want to know my Instagram account or no? Who cares?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
All right. Yeah,
Are you cool sharing me sharing it publicly in our newsletter? I mean, we're at a public meeting.
Yeah, that's why I was
Yeah.
asking. All of a sudden I thought, oh, maybe they would want to have that. Yeah, I'm not, I'll admit I'm not very good at being keeping up on it, but it's but Camrath, my last name, Kamrath sculpture. That's it. I guess at Camrath sculpture. I don't think I have pictures of this one on it yet. I may, I don't know, but I will. It'll happen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, all y'all, for taking the time. We're super excited about the project, and it's been a long haul to get to this point. And I really appreciative of John's presentation skills. He's the first sculptor that has set up the turntable so you can see it. I think it works quite nice, and it's a lovely distraction. I know you're going to share out to the other community my contact information, but if anything, other questions pop up, concerns or comments, please share them. And then I usually kind of, just to make the information flow a little bit easier and have a point of contact person, and then I can reach out to John and communicate those to him. But we'll keep you updated with progress. We hope to get this officially approved by the end of January. Then it's off to the races, and John gets to kind of bury his head in his studio and emerge with the groundhogs and bring out his piece for your neighborhood. All right, thanks. Have a good meeting. Again, reach out if there's any questions or concerns.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you for being here. That was wonderful to see what's going on. I can't wait for next summer.